The next panel is called Elevate, how HR strategies should align with the competitive retail business. Join me in welcoming our panelists for this one. Amrita Chaudhary, VP and Head HR, Kaya Limited. Let's put our hands together for Ms. Amrita Chaudhary. Welcome, ma'am. Mukta Nakra, Head People and Sustainability, Marks and Spencer's, Reliance India Private Limited. Let's put our hands together for Ms. Mukta Nakra. Rohit Kumar, CHRO, Westlife Food World, McDonald's India, West and South. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Rohit Kumar. Satyashis Banerjee, Head HR, JioMart, Reliance Retail Limited. Let's put our hands together and welcome Mr. Satyashis Banerjee. And Ms. Amisha Prabhu, CEO and co-founder, Trust for Retailers and Retail Associates of India. Let's put our hands together and welcome Ms. Amisha Prabhu. And now to moderate this panel, inviting on stage Priya Pillai, Head People Function, Retail, Corporate and Manufacturing, Titan Company Limited. We also have with us Ms. Divya Suri from Third Wave Coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for all our panelists. Ms. Amrita Chaudhary, Mukta Nakra, Rohit Kumar, Satyashis Banerjee, Amisha Prabhu, Divya Suri, and our moderator for this panel, Priya Pillai. Over to you.
Thank you. I think we're having some attrition in the room right now. Must be hungry. Good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, a caveat, a disclaimer, that the gender representation you see in this panel was not by design, but it is certainly the desire of RAI to see this percentage in the retail industry. And hence, we also have ACOM that's coming up from RAI, and I'm hoping that all of you will also join us there to make this movement a reality with the retail industry of India. So with this, let's move on to really what we've been engaging in right from what Kumar, we had Biju, Venkat, all of them speak about some of the shifts that the industry is seeing and the importance of people in retail industry. Some statistics that I'm sure all of you are aware, but let me just bring it up. 2000 to 2006, retail industry created about 3 million jobs. I want to ask the audience here, in the last decade, in fact, 10 years, how many jobs do you think retail industry has created in India? Any guesses? Any guesses? Don't see your phone. So it's close to 50 million jobs that have got created in the last decade itself. And it's one of the largest growing industry. And as we saw this morning, it's also an industry that's bringing in a large number of employment to the country. I remember in the mid-90s when I entered retail industry, there was an article in India Today. And that article had statistics of the young people's desire to which industry they would like to be associated with. And right at the top was financial sector, consulting sectors. And any guesses which one was there right at the bottom of that chart? There were two industries that featured right at the bottom of the chart in the mid-95, and that's teaching and retail. And at that point in time, I remember in the 90s, and this was also the conversations we were having, it was just about attracting people and telling people that retail is a good place to be in, right? In the 95s, it's about just telling that, listen, this is an industry that is not dukaan mein khade hoke bechna hai, but you can actually make careers in the retail industry. Now fast forward to 2024, and I think all that we could talk as panelists when we met in the last 1 week was a war for talent. How difficult it is to get people right from the entry level to different parts of the retail businesses. So with this competitiveness really increasing, we've also got other nuances, which is e-commerce, quick commerce. You can see how customers have become very comfortable and they trust doing transactions on digital platforms. There is also high adoption of the digital payment. And we can also see that, let me tell you that after COVID, I could see how comfortable my mother, who's 75, is in ordering online, which was perhaps not happening pre-COVID. So with consumer behavior shifting, organizations have also had to quite rapidly change their business models. And I can tell you in Titan, e-commerce was one of those many channels that we had. And we would always focus on the physical retail. We would focus on the different channels like the trade. But suddenly, post the COVID, the focus on the entire e-commerce has actually rapidly grown. Today, we don't talk about only number of stores. We talk about number of PIN codes that you are serving. So let me now request the panelists who are from diverse portfolio of industry, and we have a wild card entry. We, in fact, requested Amisha from TRRAIN also to join us today because she's really seen how the retail industry has transformed and she's very passionate about it. So you will see a lot of passion coming out today in this conversation. But I'm going to request each of them to share maybe 1 or 2 top shifts that they're seeing in their industry from the business angle, not necessarily from HR, but from business. What are some of the shifts that you're seeing in your respective industries? How is it impacting your own business? Anybody can start. Mukta, you want to start?
Sure, happy to go first, but thank you for setting a fantastic, context to this conversation. Everything around us is evolving, and of course, retail industry is rapidly shifting with all that's happened, and thanks to the pandemic, it's kind of just amplified the digital, disruption that was expected. But I think when I look at specifically from an M&S perspective, of course, the traditional competition includes international brands that come with a lot of authority in global designs, as well as, domestic players that bring that fashionability with affordability, which is equally key for, our customers. But the way customers' mindset is kind of evolving. Sustainability and how customers look at how has the product been sourced has become an equally interesting challenge for us and something that's in the forefront of our product strategy. Is a very interesting shift that I think is quite unique and upcoming in today's world. But when you look at even what the D2C brands are doing, leave alone what the online channel itself can do and how much competition we get from online platforms, but look at how D2C, brands that have just suddenly come up and changed the whole proposition of fashion, how quickly you can get it, and how easy it is to afford it. So I think there's so much that's evolving in such a rapid way that it does have a huge implication on how we look at people aspects as well, but I'll hold that for the conversation to kind of lay out.
Sure. Satyashis is in JioMart, right? I can see there is significant shifts in the way consumers are now just looking at their buying behaviors in grocery segment. And I think the competition is so diverse there. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, yes, there is a lot of competition in the grocery space, the grocery retail space. Though JioMart is a horizontal, we sell other category items too. And so if you look at the way e-commerce evolved, okay, from convenience to being affordable, to now it is like quick commerce has taken over. So there's a lot of heat in the quick commerce space, and there's a lot happening in that space. So I remember I was having a conversation with a very renowned startup founder around 3 years back where quick commerce had just come in, and I was of the opinion that this is not sustainable because the costs of running quick commerce is prohibitive. But today, in 3 years, I was proven wrong. I mean, you can also buy a PS5 and get it in 10 minutes. So things are changing. So everything is coming into the ambit of quick commerce, and only time will tell what all will happen in this space.
Sure. So, Amrita, in the space that you're in, it is, I think, the most unique industry. Kaya is certainly part retail, part service, and a very large part medico as well. Right. And in our conversations, we were also talking about how some of the competition is also sitting within within your own organization. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. So, like you rightly said, it's a very unique industry. It's a business that's led, 60% of the business is led by the doctors that we have in the clinics. And our business is relationship-based, which means that every client has a relationship with the doctor that makes the client come back to the clinic. So what we have seen over a period of years is that, one, that because of a lot of PE investments, there's a movement or a shift from unorganized and semi-organized players into the organized sector, with the regional players going pan-India, opening, say, 50 stores in a year, 50 clinics in a year, which typically is a QSR trend that we are seeing in the aesthetic dermatology space. So that's one type of competition that's come in. Then you also have the local dermats who open up their own clinics, very local players but very powerful competitors. And the most interesting thing here is the aspiration of doctors is essentially a lot of them want to not grow up the corporate ladder, but they want to go out and open their own clinics. So when they leave, if a key doctor leaves, our business leaves with her. Right, so when you say our competition is sitting inside, it really is. I mean, we not only lose a valuable employee, we also lose our business. So yeah, very, very critical space. Yeah,
I can imagine that. Now, moving to QSR, and if both Rohit and Divya could just share with us what's happening in that industry. And I can just see so many models and different brands that are mushrooming, both from localized and obviously the more organized players that are coming in. Is there heat there as well?
So I think while customer obsession is something that's true to all of us, the competitive landscape today requires us to innovate and differentiate ourselves in cycle times which haven't existed prior to this. It is, if you just look at the last 5 years post-COVID, right? Instant gratification has a very different real-time perception. And the world is shrinking in terms of the way people consume it, understand it. Their definitions of what they want to experience and pay for is changing. And that translates into how organizations are trying to cater for it. So I think differentiation, innovation are key themes. And it translates into our agendas, right? When you buy talent. It's not about being there, done that. It's about looking at what the consumer wants today and taking data-backed decisions. So yeah, I think that's the key theme, at least absolutely for the QSR space as well.
So just extending to what Divya said, being from the same industry. So there's a lot happening in the QSR industry, Priya, and especially with the emergence of a lot of coffee chains, premium coffee chains, and everyone is targeting different segments of customers. So I would still say while the landscape have become very, very competitive, I think there is a pie for everyone because the market is so big. And on top of that, gone are those days where people are going to a certain bakery or going to a hotel chain to have. QSR is all about speed and convenience. So even if you visit a mall, if your anchor is going to be movies or shopping, what our research says is eating food in a mall is one of the last options because that's a good add-on to have. And that's where we play. I mean, the QSR plays a very significant part. But when I was reflecting your question, Priya, I think the larger question to answer is, how do we as McDonald's become more and more relevant in customer space? So one is a relative comparison between A versus B versus C. But the larger question is, how do we become competitive to ourselves? So how people have been seeing McDonald's for a long time, vis-a-vis right now what they're expecting. You know, for example, a vegetarian population which is going bigger. For example, what people are comparing with our nearest competitor. You know, the recency effect, we have just launched a completely new product for us, which is called McCrispy Burger. Now, crispiness was never one of our agenda items. So we are innovating. Coffee chains are one, the QSR space is one. The landscape is evolving, but at the same time, the larger question that we are reflecting as an organization is, how do we become more and more relevant? Because loyalty is not the name of the game in QSR for sure, unlike apparel, retail, etc. But it's a challenge within ourselves that we are looking at.
Thanks, Rohit. And, you know, shifting to you, Amisha, what are some of the, and you interact with many business leaders across the retail sector, what are some of their asks?
So before I go on to answer that, Priya, I'll just comment on what Diya and Rohit said. The competition for the youth is currently not another store. It's actually all of you are competing or vying for their space as against a travel or a hobby or me time or work-life balance. Today, the youngsters are actually very, very clear, at least the ones who want to enter the corporate world or want to work with a D2C brand or an entrepreneur, like somebody mentioned here, want to create jobs for themselves. They are actually putting job, hobbies, interest, passion in that category and then dividing time. So you may actually have to come up with practices where you not only allow weekend workings or probably part-time. That is happening. The industry is doing it. But I'm saying so much more prevalent. Work from home. We just read yesterday, Google is calling everybody back into the workspace because, to answer your question, the cultural fabric of the organization is not getting translated to the last common denominator. Each one of you in the morning, including GRV, Venkat, spoke about how everything that we visualize in a boardroom or as a CEO's vision needs to percolate to the last common denominator. And when that doesn't happen, there is so much of dissonance that is happening, which is leading to attrition. And I think we all agreed that that is the most difficult job today a CHRO has. And that's the ask. The second thing that all our HR friends are talking about is not being able to get the right talent for the right job. And this also is, to a certain extent, we can blame, and I don't mean it in a bad manner, the whole quick commerce, where there are no transferable skills. I mean, today a quick commerce, they recruit huge numbers, and out of the 50 million, there might be few millions that are added on by the quick commerce and the warehouse logistics industry. But at the same time, the youth today is choosing between working in a big basket or an Amazon warehouse to working in your store. And that is where the policies as well as the engagement needs to change.
Thanks, Amisha. That, I think, beautifully segues into the war for talent that all of us are facing the heat. See, at one level, we see, and RAI is doing a lot of work in that space, where you have talent that's being groomed for retail. But on the other hand, there are organizations that are saying that, hey, listen, there's not enough, both from capacity and capability. And I want to hear some of you, your perspectives on that. And we could go in any order. Rohit, you want to?
So, on the war for talent front, Priya, this is one thing that perhaps the industry knows, that we are an organization who primarily focus on grooming our internal talent. And we take pride in saying that, barring the crew levels and a handful that we from the we groom the talent internally. So Of course, I mean, because of the industry landscape, there is always a threat looming for losing the talent. But I'm just stretching that a little bit, Priya, on how we have been looking at this model to be successful is, I think it's primarily dependent on the planning and execution. So for example, if I look at succession planning as a theme, right, and that comes with a risk of losing talent, which likely, like you mentioned, the war for talent. But the fact is, even in my own previous experiences, there are organizations which focus on how do we ensure there's a success. But McDonald's, for instance, at least in the last so many months, we have started on thinking about how success has been the succession planning. Now, what it means is a lot of times we let loose of people once they land into a certain role, and that too without a backup. So I think what we have been trying to do is, one, we've been having a strong backup, at least planning 24 months in advance. We are a listed company, so obviously our expansion plans are very well there in the market, so we need to plan that. But the fact that the team, especially the HR team, focuses along with operations is, where do you let go of the person once the person is landing into a new role? Which means that it cannot be a crash landing and it has to be successful. So the focus around, of course, there has to be the tactics around that, which is around developing the training programs, learning program. But as simple as you can see a burger, how we sell in our restaurant, we have made the learning journey within the stores for people to grow so simple that we are able to just focus on the behavioral parts, because technically it's not a very complicated business. It's about, selling the burgers and more, as simple as it can sound. But I think the more focus is on how do you behave yourself as senior leader as you grow up the ladder. And the whole focus between people ops, we have been calling it people and operations together, has been ensuring they grow well in the ladder. And that is how we have looked at the war and the talent that we have to take care of. Having said that, there is always a risk. But another angle to it will be, Priya, that we have also evolved, right? I mean, as much we face competition from JioMart, etc., on losing the riders, our omni-channel also has evolved so that we are able to manage our talent across both hybrid business models. So that will be a quick answer.
And I was amazed to hear that McDonald's has 100% of their store management groomed and built internally. So I think that's certainly a great story to learn from. Mukta, you spoke about the challenges and the stress that the apparel industry is also going through. So tell us about what is M&S's people's strategy to address some of that?
Very complex question. Thank you for putting me in a spot, Priya. But I think we like to keep it simple. As much as we want to keep it simple, the business is going through so much. So, there is not just a skill gap that's come in. The expectation from business of what they want people to deliver is also constantly growing. And the skill gap of what people used to do as baseline is also growing in terms of the capabilities that we onboard today. So the gap is only kind of widening. And, for us, I think culture is at the core of everything that we do. So despite some of the challenges that we face, whether it is the multicultural workforce, whether it is the fact that you need skills that are not just about the future of what is digital, but even aspects like how do you think critically, or how do you solve for problems? How are you thinking of future today? And again, even for us, because the focus is so much to grow the talent from within, how do we build that line management capability that is able to, while these shifting priorities of business kind of evolve, also ensure that the customer centricity in the culture remains intact. And that itself, to unpack what I've just said, will be difficult for me to repeat as well. But that's how complex the whole relationship between business, people, skills, expectation has become. But as I said, our mantra is quite simple around culture, so how we onboard people and how do we integrate them culturally, how we look at our policies. But even then we know that, while we were one of the early adopters or creators of 5-day working week in the retail industry, competition has caught up. And what is flexibility, or the definition of flexibility for the new age workforce? And how do we reimagine ourselves in that space? How do we ensure people learn that, as I mentioned earlier, sustainability is an interesting area. And when people think of sustainability, they want to style the same products in 5 different ways. How do we bring that mindset to the forefront of our frontline colleagues to be able to help and engage with the customer in a dialogue that is important for us? So, skill building along with the cultural focus in all our policies, ways of working, and just simply how leadership shows up every single day and building those line management skills. So we have basic 3 skills that are, kind of called out in for our line managers. Care, ensure that whatever you do it with a duty of care. Clarity, ensure that whatever you expect from your people, you're clear about what you want them to deliver. And third is praise. Ensure that you recognize, if nothing else, express gratitude for people having to do what they have to do, because we know retail jobs are not easy, right? So I think lots of cultural tenets in this, but that's really what's ensuring that we're able to move forward in an environment that is rapidly evolving with employee expectations changing, customer expectations changing, and the business itself kind of looking at very different things for the future.
So I have a follow-up question on culture, right? So there is an organization level culture, but we also realize there are multiple subcultures that exist in the company. How do you address those subcultures, which sometimes also give us sleepless night, because you know that there could be a certain dispersion in that? Any thoughts on that from any of you?
I'll just build on it since as I said, culture is a key tenet for us in an organization. I think the HR business partners, that I have across the regions as well as in our support center, I think are attuned to kind of pick in conversations the emotion and the sentiment behind what's being expressed. And a lot of that kind of flows in through a simple medium that we've created in our organization called EIG. It's called an Employee Interest Group, which is a safe space for people to come and speak about how are they experience the organization. And the MD is a sponsor of that program. And it is primarily a program for the people, by the people. So primarily elevating the voice of colleagues, ensuring that we have a culture of listening, and then being able to have those tough conversations, if needed, with leaders to say, we think there are certain aspects that we are observing that don't necessarily sit well with our culture, and just ensure they're coached as line managers as well as leaders.
Thank you. Anything, Divya or Amrita, if you could also share?
Yeah, so the organization I'm with, we are building the organization. So you typically bring in stalwarts who have worked with various ecosystems and various brands. And this is something that's, you do not want subcultures created. They've all come from excellent brands. Creating a common language, creating common rituals. And it's part of the employer branding journey, between being real on where you are today and where you want to go. Everyone giving the same story and what it's going to take. So the how to the what. Okay, what do we want to achieve? How are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it here? And it's a daily conversation which then gets into, your routines, your reviews, your communication, and most importantly, taking people into what we are actually delivering. So actually working with the front line, visiting, in our case, the cafes, and getting them to be obsessed about the same consumer with the same lens, and not the different perspectives they've come for. I think that's a daily routine which, we really at times have to push people to say, have you created that time this month to get on ground with your teams so that we speak the same language? And you're right, this can keep you up all night to ensure that, you don't have subcultures and a different way of working emerging in another, silo of the organization.
Thank you. Amrita, how is it in Kaya?
So my take is, while I absolutely resonate with what you're saying in terms of especially the leadership team and maybe a layer or two below them to speak the same language is extremely critical, then you're sending the same message down. But for us, the subculture thing plays a little differently because you have on one side people you would find in any typical retail, whether it's food or apparel, which is people coming in at the floor and then growing up and being groomed to the managerial levels or customer care executive levels. That's one kind of employee. And then we have a set of doctors who I have come from QSR, and QSR is all about standardization of processes, scalability, how do you ensure same processes are followed everywhere. At Kaya, because we are dealing with highly educated specialists who have very, very different career aspirations, even culturally, we have had to design programs that suited to our doctors, which are actually quite different from the way we look at talent attraction, talent development in a typical retail setup. So what we've done is we have launched this program called Doctor First Culture. We actually call it culture. It embraces multiple elements, including partially employer branding that you were talking about, but how do you brand yourself as an employer of choice for doctors who are studying in medical colleges doing their postgrads? I mean, that's a very different challenge to cater to. So we are working on it, how to make ourselves attractive to the doctor community, because they have multiple options open to them. Getting into corporate is not the obvious first choice. And how we went about it is first is to listen to them, listen to the doctors, and we held a lot of focus groups to kind of understand their aspirations. And what we realized is their aspirations are completely related to the stage of life they are in. I won't even say careers, but stage of life. And you have to remember that at Kaya, 96% of my front line is women, right? Which is a fantastic thing to have, but comes with its own challenges. So we kind of have curated, we have divided them into cohorts basis their maturity in the system, maturity in their professional space, and curated programs of engagement and learning specifics to small cohorts. It's a lot of customization as opposed to standardization for the rest of the population, I can say that.
Sure, thanks. Satyashis, you want to share something?
So, I mean, many of you have partly said what I wanted to say. So for us, driving a uniform culture and not allowing, subcultures to prop up is critical. So what we at JioMart have done is we have opened our communication channels. We believe in listening to people and, talking to them. So we have a lot of, levers, or we have a lot of mechanisms to meet different cohorts of people. Like yesterday, we had a session where, high performers from across levels met our CEO, and, it was supposed to be a half-an-hour conversation, but it went on for 1.5 hours. And, in that conversation, even we learned a lot, and, we got a pulse as to whether the culture that we are trying to drive is uniform across the organization. Yeah, so one piece is we listen and we talk very often. The second part is whenever we see people, living the values or the culture of the organization, we call it out and we reward them in our R&R, our regular R&R. Yeah, and these are the few things that we do to ensure that the culture that we want to have at JioMart, stays.
So I'm going to put cat amongst the pigeons as well now, which is, from a subculture that I'm noticing across, and we shared this also in our conversation, is that I think the entire patience to train people is reducing, right? You want ready-made talent. You want talent that will get onto the floor and start delivering. And we were talking about how early days, the investment that a manager would make in training somebody was much higher. But now you look at a manager, they don't necessarily go towards a fresher profile. Like the previous panel, the conversation was also perhaps there's also, the other issue of the older profile. But here, they want people with some experience who come and hit the ground running. So how are we going to address that? And I'm going to start with Amisha. Because the other challenge we face is that we have a lot of, ready, skill-built people sitting, waiting to be employed. And then we have organizations that really are looking for, or managers in organizations who are looking for people with experience. So what are some things that organizations should be looking at to build this gap?
So, as everybody mentioned about culture, I think it's not very easy. I spoke about it in the beginning. But like you said, there is impatience in the business, truly so, because it's growing. Scale is something that works both the ways. It's positive and negative. Negative when we can't dedicate that kind of time for training, etc. And this itself is the biggest issue in terms of how we are not able to translate the moral or the cultural fabric of the organization to the last person. Having said that, can we say, should we institutionalize culture? Should it become SOP driven? It cannot. Because you have to live the culture of the organization, you have to live the ethos of that organization. And I speak on behalf of all the organizations that I have worked with. There is every element that we have taken from the value system, from the cultural way of working, from the way we treat our partners, our vendors, our customers, that we've bought in. Now, Priya, shall I leave everything, unlearn and adopt the culture of the new organization? Or are you fungible enough to allow me to speak in a safe space to say, is that my culture also, can I imbibe and bring it together? Too many times, these clashes that happen is purely because it's your culture versus my culture. And this is currently, I would say, the biggest challenge that HR fraternity faces in retail, because we see, and COVID actually literally added more fuel to the fire, where you had so many people working remotely and so many people joined in COVID and left in COVID, and there was nothing that we could do about it because they never understood the ethos of the organization. So I think this is something that the organizations are looking at to say, can we have, and especially the HR fraternity will ask the businesses to have a little more patience. Can we get more time for induction? Can we get more time for training? Is there a way that it's not always virtual academy and training that works with people? There is a touch and feel that comes into play. And I think that's something that I hear very, very often from a lot of people. Especially online brands which are now coming into offline, they are actually dedicating a lot of time in building that culture offline, because online it was just between them and the customer.
Yes, dear.
I think I'd like to add to that. One is, it goes back to the ethos of the organization. So if you're a build organization where, like at our cafes, right, or in the earlier organization I was with, to grow forward, you have to grow people who work with you. So you teach them how to take on your job for you to do the next. As you move to the region and the centers, as skill levels increase, people have started learning in different ways. But if you go back a little bit before, why do people leave? It's for career opportunities. So the hunger to learn and grow is still there. The forms in which you want to consume it have had to become a little more flexible. And over there, as HR, we play a very important role in helping leaders navigate those spaces, doing more frequent check-ins, where it is safe and there is trust. The whole psychological piece of being a safe space to say when I need help. It's a new scenario, I don't know how to navigate. I have an idea, but can I fail quick? And what's the timeline I have to fail? What's the budget I can fail within? And it's about partnering with leaders. These are all learning scenarios. So learning has a new context. It doesn't have a classroom always. It's not always online. At times it's mentors. At times it's about providing them access to a space which does not exist in your ecosystem. So I think it's about partnering through that and helping leaders navigate it, because it's very different from what it used to be.
So So just to add on to that, Priya, what we have been doing is, I think this whole piece of values of, ways of working and values and ethos is very important. But to me at least, I'm looking back at a very fundamental question that we ask. What's our talent framework? You know, is it buy, is it build, or is it borrow? You know, what do we want to do? So very categorically, we have, at least in McDonald's, identified where are the functions, sub-functions where we want to build, so that, you know, there is not a requirement of a subculture being created. And there are areas where we have to buy. And obviously, we have to go to the market. Now, even when we go to the market, I think one of the interesting conversations I've been having with my leadership team is that we have navigated from erstwhile IQ to EQ and now something called AQ, which is adaptability quotient, you know. Because there is nothing much to choose between a JD or a profile of two individuals. Emotionally, yes, in half an hour or 1 hour, we're not sure how much we'll be able to measure. But I think the larger amount that we spend on a candidate when we meet is on the adaptability factor. Who are the stakeholders the person is going to interact with? What is the culture of that particular function or a sub-function? And of course, there are outliers to it. Some people fit in, some people don't fit in. But Priya, the point is that is the organization clear about where they want to create and not create? Because ultimately, when it happens, we cannot run for cover and say, okay, now let's create a new culture. So I think culture creation and subculture creation is a result of the operational mechanics of an organization, and be very choosy about, even if you're bringing a young talent from a campus, do that person fit into the cultural code of what you have as an organization?
You want to add something? Sure.
Small example. So, JioMart is a very new organization, and 3 years before we were building the entire team grounds up. So when the manpower plan was presented by different leaders, everybody wanted everyone to be experienced. And I looked at it and we realized that this is not sustainable. So we put a cost to everything and we presented it. And the leaders themselves realized that if we do not get fresh blood, or let's say a 20-30% people who are fresh, and we don't have a development ecosystem, okay, this will not sustain. And that's where we started, you know, building various modes of learning. Like we also have a method where people within who come with a very good niche skill, they teach others. Like we have a person who trained a huge set of people on Gen AI. Yeah, so we use different modes, online, offline, different modes to train, and this is how we ensure that, you know, people are, you know, encouraged to train others.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And hopefully, Amisha, we'll see some shifts after this in also the number of people we would need in. And I think there's a point which Biju made in the morning where if for example, for 300 crores, you need 600 people, and for another 300 crores, you need 600, and for like-to-like growth as well, this number is exponentially growing. And the number of cities that we are even physically entering is still under-penetrated. There are 500 plus towns where the penetration is still very poor. So I do believe that the organizations have to come together, industry, along with the industry body, to create both a culture of learning and development and provide opportunities for people who are there to get into the retail industry. And I do believe that that India Today article, if it were to come today, perhaps will feature right in the top of the graph. I know we're out of time, but we will pause for some questions from the audience. Okay, I think people are really hungry and want to go for lunch. All right, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having this session with all of you, and a lot of things that I learned personally. Thanks a ton. Thank you.